Welcome back, everyone. This is Raghurama Bhat, your memory coach on wheels. Today, we are going to dive deeper than we ever have been before, into a topic that has the power to completely transform not just how you study, but how you experience learning for the rest of your life. Yeah, we are talking about moving from the exhaustive, anxiety-inducing cycle of cramming to a state of absolute, unbreakable clarity. Let's begin. So grab a notebook, settle, and give me your full attention here because what we are going about to discuss is not just theory. It is the exact blueprint that changed my life and it is the foundation of the techniques I teach today. Let me take you back to the year 1995. I was in the third standard and I was standing outside the principal's office. Even now at 40, I can close my eyes and feel the exact texture of that day. The school corridor felt unusual, terrifyingly long. Even small sound, the distant scrap of a wooden chair, the muffled voice of a teacher in a classroom, the rhythmic tickle of the wall clock echoed in my ears. Every passing second felt heavier than the last. My hands were sweating and my heart was beating so fast it felt like a trapped bird trying to escape from my chest. Well, I slowly pushed the heavy wooden door open and stepped inside the principal's room. The room was perfectly quiet. A thick beam of golden morning sunlight was falling gently across the polished surface of the principal's desk. Then I kept my head down. I stared intensely at the scuffs of my black, school shoes because deep inside, I already knew exactly why I was there. I was not what anyone would call a good student. I would sit at my small desk at home with my books open, just staring at the pages. I desperately tried to memorize everything. I would read the same lines again and again and again, trying to hammer the words into my brain through sheer force. But nothing stayed. The words felt completely dry, like dry sand slipping through my fingers. My grades were consistently poor, and slowly a dark, heavy thought had started taking root in my young mind. Maybe I am not just capable, maybe I am not just smart enough. So on that day, the principal was sitting behind a large desk. She looked at me calmly. There was no anger in her eyes, no shouting, no harsh disappointment. Instead, there was a deep, quiet patience. She leaned forward slightly and, resting her hands on the desk, asked me a simple, unexpected question. Raghu, do you know where your father is right now? I looked up, slightly confused by the question, and softly said, Ma'am, Saudi Arabia, ma'am. Saudi Arabia, yes. She nodded gently. Do you know what he is doing there? I shook my head. I only knew he was far away, that's it. She paused for a moment, looked directly into my eyes, and said something that bypassed my brain and went straight into my soul. It is a moment that has stayed with me forever. She said, he is working in the hot desert, far away from his family, facing many difficulties. He is doing all this for your future, Raghu. That moment felt different. Something profound shifted inside me. Instantly, the words painted a picture in my mind. I didn't just hear it, I visualized it. I imagined my father standing under the burning, unforgiving sun of the Middle East. I saw him working incredibly hard, sweating, struggling through long hours, lonely days, and the realization hit me like a physical weight. He was not doing it for himself, he was doing it for me. I felt a thick lump form in my throat. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, And suddenly, in that quiet office, my academic problem became crystal clear. It was not that I lacked intelligence. It was not that I had a broken brain that could not study. My real problem was that I was studying without meaning. I was sitting with books, but I had no purpose, no emotional connection, no genuine understanding of why I was doing it. Yep, I was just trying to swallow words to avoid getting in trouble. From that very day, I made a silent, firm decision. I stopped trying to blindly memorize everything. Instead, I started trying to actually understand what I was reading. I'll be completely honest with you. In the beginning, it was incredibly difficult. It felt painfully slow. It was uncomfortable to sit with a paragraph and realize I had no idea what it meant. Yeah. I had to swallow my pride and accept my ignorance. I had to start asking questions, even the simple ones that made me feel silly. Sometimes I felt completely stuck. Sometimes I felt so frustrated I wanted to throw the book across the room. But slowly, step by step, things started changing. Because I was looking for meaning, my focus was naturally improved. Because I was actually grasping the concepts, my confidence began to grow. My grades eventually improved. Yeah. But the most important shift wasn't on my report card. It was on my mind. I stopped feeling like a helpless victim of the education system. I started feeling in control of my own intellect. Now let me ask you something. I want you to be totally honest with yourself, yeah? Have you ever sat at a desk late at night, the day before a massive exam, frantically trying to memorize everything as quickly as possible? You read the same highlighted lines over and over, your eyes track across the page perfectly, but your mind is completely detached. You feel the physical exhaustion of studying, but deep in your gut, you know the terrifying truth. You are just trying to temporarily hold on to meaningless words. You feel tired, deeply frustrated, and consumed by a quiet anxiety that tomorrow your mind will betray you. This is the trap of rote learning. Yeah. Millions of brilliant, capable students are stuck in this exhausting cycle right now. Rote learning is seductive. Yeah, because it gives you a temporary fragile illusion of confidence. You can recite the definition perfectly in your bedroom, but the moment you sit in the exam hall and the examiner changes the wordings of the question slightly, just a slight twist in the phrasing, your mind goes entirely blank and a panic sets in. This happens because you never actually understood the core concept. You only memorized the surface level arrangement of letters. It is exactly like memorizing the lyrics of a complex song in a language you do not speak. You might be able to repeat the sounds perfectly, but if someone asks you to explain the emotion of or the story behind the song, you have absolutely nothing to say, right? That is exactly why students forget 90% of the syllabus just a few days after the exam is over. Nothing was anchored, nothing was deeply understood. If you want to break this cycle, if you want to unlock the potential of your mind, you must fundamentally change your approach. You must transition from the anxiety of cramming to the power of clarity. Over the years, I developed a system. It is called the 6-step anti-cramming code. This is not magic, okay? It is a practical, scientifically backed, simple, and fearfully powerful technique if you apply it consistently. Okay, let's break it down. Step 1, understand the why, the meaning anchor. Before your brain willingly accepts, process, and stores any piece of information, it silently, subconsciously asks one critical question. Why is this important? If you do not know answer, for this question, your brain will absolutely refuse to cooperate. It will treat the information as spam and delete it. So, before you start highlighting text or creating flashcards, you must pause, ask yourself, why am I learning this? How does this connect to the real world? Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you are studying the concept of inflation in an economics class. The textbook definition might be saying something like this: inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. Yeah. If you just chant the sentence 10 times, you are cramming. Instead, stop and think about your real life. Think about the tea stall near your house. Why does a cup of tea that cost 10 rupees 5 years ago now cost 20 rupees? Why is your family constantly discussing the rising price of petrol or vegetables? How does this invisible force quietly change your family's monthly budget? Yeah, think about it. So, when you connect the dry academic concept of inflation to the very real anxiety of your household budget or the cost of your favorite snack, it instantly becomes meaningful. Your brain shapes, yeah, or snaps to attention. It says, oh, this affects my life. I need to remember this. Meaning creates a magnetic memory. Right without meaning, there is only neurological resistance. Okay, now let's discuss step 2. The art of deconstruction. Break it down. When you look at a massive 40-page chapter, a thick textbook, or an overwhelming syllabus, your brain physically reacts to it as a threat. It sees an insurmountable mountain of information, experiences cognitive overload, and immediately triggers a stress response. What is the most common stress response to studying? It's procrastination. You suddenly feel, the urge to clean your room or scroll your phone or take a nap. The solution to this is elegant and simple. Deconstruction. You must break everything down into ridiculously small, manageable parts. Instead of sitting down and telling yourself, I am going to complete this entire chapter on the Indian Constitution today, which feels heavy and oppressive, change your language. Tell yourself, for the next 20 minutes, I am only going to focus on understanding the concept of fundamental rights, nothing else. Small goals drastically reduce psychological pressure. When you successfully understand that one small topic, your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine. Yeah, that small win creates momentum, and momentum builds genuine confidence. If you are studying the Constitution, don't look at the whole book. Focus on fundamental rights, in the beginning. Then break that down even further. Focus just on the right to equality. Step by step, slice by slice, the insurmountable mountain becomes a series of easy, flat stepping stones. Step 3. The teacher's perspective, the Feynman technique. This is perhaps the most transformative step of the entire code. After studying a topic for your allotted 20 minutes, close your book, physically shut it. Now imagine you are standing in front of a classroom or perhaps sitting next to a 10-year-old child. Your job is to explain the concept you just learned in your own words, completely from your memory. Yeah. When you passively read, the information flows into your brain. But when you're forced to explain it, your brain has to actually process, organize, and push the information out. During this process, something magical happens. If you don't truly understand a concept, you will start to stumble over your whole words. Yeah, you will realize you can't connect point A to point B. The illusion of competence shatters. Listen to me very carefully. That confusion is not a failure. That confusion is a beautiful, highly precise neurological signal. It is a spotlight shining directly on the exact gap in your knowledge. When you stumble, don't panic. Simply open the book again, review that specific gap, close the book, and try teaching it again. Repeat this until your explanation flows smoothly and simply. Yeah. As Albert Einstein supposedly said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it very well enough. When you become the teacher, you master the subject. Now, step 4, the anchoring technique. Keywords. Our brains are not designed to memorize long, dense academic paragraphs word for word. The brain prefers simple, sharp cues over exhaustive details. When you study, instead of trying to memorize a 200-word answer, you need to extract the DNA of that paragraph. You do this by finding keywords, the trigger words that act as mental anchors. Let's say you are studying a complex geography question about the mechanism of the Indian monsoon. The textbook answer is a full page long. Instead of memorizing the sentences, pull out the keywords, the trigger words, something like pressure difference, wind movement, moisture, yeah, topography, rainfall. These words are your anchors. When you sit in the exam, you don't try to remember the paragraphs. You simply recall your yeah couple of keywords, the trigger words that you memorized. Because you have already done the work of understanding the concept, your brain will construct the sentence from these trigger words automatically. Your brain naturally fills in the grammar and the connecting thoughts. Don't worry about it. Using this technique drastically reduces the sheer volume of data you need to hold in your brain. Yeah, lowering your stress levels and dramatically improving your recall speed when the clock is ticking in an exam hall. Now let's discuss step 5, the science of memory, active recall and spaced revision. Here is a hard truth that most students refuse to accept. Reading the same chapter 5 times does not build a strong memory. It only builds familiarity. Familiarity is when you look at a page and think, I know this. Memory is when you stare at a blank wall and can generate the information from scratch. Reading is a passive activity. Real deep learning only happens through friction. It happens when you close the book and aggressively try to pull the information out of your brain. This is called active recall. Yes, it feels difficult. It feels uncomfortable to strain your brain trying to remember a keyword, But that very difficulty, that mental heavy lifting, is exactly what thickens the neural pathways in your brain, cementing the memory permanently. But active recall alone isn't enough. Our brain, our brains are designed to forget things that we don't use regularly. To combat this, you must use spaced revision, also called spaced repetition. Do not study a topic once and then look at it 3 months later, right before the exam. You will have forgotten 90% of it. Instead, study it using active recall today. Yeah. Then review it again tomorrow, day 1. Review it again 3 days from today, that is on day 3, and review it again in a week, that is on day 7. So day 1, day 3, day 7. So that is the active, what we call active repetition. Spaced repetition, I mean, active recall and spaced repetition, yes. So each time you recall the information just as you are about to forget it, you send a powerful signal to your brain. This information is vital for my survival. Do not delete it. So that is the signal. Instead of one miserable 10-hour marathon study session before the exam, you are giving your brain multiple low stress opportunities to log the information into your long term storage. So that's a very effective way. Now let's discuss the step 6, the physicality of memory. Practice writing. Well, we live in a digital age where we mostly type or read on screens. However, the vast majority of crucial academic and competitive exams are still written on physical paper. Therefore, your preparation must match your performance environment. Knowledge in your head is useless if you cannot translate it through your arm into your pen hand onto the paper within a strict time limit. Once you have understood a topic, explained it, and memorized the trigger words, the keywords, take a blank sheet of white paper. Without looking at notes, write out your answer. So, writing is a deeply cognitive and physical act. It exposes your true level of clarity. You will quickly realize if your thoughts are organized or messy. So, practicing writing builds muscle memory, improves your handwriting, speed under fatigue, and gives the ultimate confidence that when the examiner says start, you will know exactly how to flow your thoughts onto the page. So, those are the 6 steps. Now, the ultimate amplifier, yeah, a bonus step, the technique of visualization. Now, if you practice those 6 steps, you will be ahead of 95% of students. But I want to give you this secret sauce, the master key. This one powerful layer you must add, to all these steps. And it is a technique I focus on heavily in my coaching, It's visualization. Evolutionarily, human beings have been seeing and experiencing the visual world for millions of years. We have only been reading text for few thousands of years. Yeah. So visualizing has been for millions of years, but reading has been only for a few thousands of years. Your brain is a supercomputer perfectly optimized for processing images, not abstract letters. Words are incredibly slow for brain to decode. Images are processed almost instantly. See, this is exactly why you easily remember the entire plot, the colors, the background music of a movie you watched 3 years ago, but you cannot remember a textbook paragraph you read 3 days ago. When you study, you must refuse to just read dead words. You must become a mental movie director. You must use the technique of visualization. If you are studying geography, do not just read about the Himalayan mountains. Close your eyes and mentally fly over them. Feel the freezing wind. See the white snow against the dark rock. Visualize the tectonic plates crashing into each other in slow motion beneath the earth. So you should imagine and visualize this. If you are studying history, do not memorize dates like a robot. Put yourself in the scene. If you are learning about the freedom struggle, imagine the dust of the roads, hear the chants of the crowds, visualize the faces of the leaders. Make it a vibrant, noisy, high definition movie in your head. If you are studying biology, shrink yourself down and imagine you are traveling through the human bloodstream like a submarine. Yeah, watching red blood cells carry oxygen, seeing white blood cells attack viruses like soldiers. Something like that, something illogic you should visualize and imagine when you are studying. When you consciously turn boring two-dimensional information into rich, multi-sensory three-dimensional images, yeah, your brain stops resisting the information. It absorbs it greedily because it likes it. Visualization makes learning alive. And let me promise you this. When learning becomes alive, memory becomes completely natural. You won't have to try to remember, you just will. The power of habit and transformation. Even after knowing all this, yeah, even after understanding the science of how to learn, many students will listen to me now, nod their heads, and go right back to your cramming tomorrow. Yeah, right? You know why? The biggest reason is fear. When exams are looming close, students enter a state of neurological panic. Their stress hormones spike. They feel they do not have enough time to understand things. So they default to the fastest, most desperate method, dumping facts into their short term memory. But this panic only increases stress, destroys sleeps, and guarantees a mental blackout in the exam hall. The second reason is simple: stubborn habits. From a very young age, most of us were never actually taught how to learn, how to memorize. We were only handed books and told what to learn, right? So we developed inefficient, painful habits. We associate studying with suffering. But habits are not destiny. Habits can be rewritten, habits can be changed. And when your habits change, your entire reality changes. This is exactly why I designed the Advanced Memory Mastery Bootcamp. I realized that giving people a list of tips isn't enough. They need a structured environment to break old habits and build neurological pathways. They need daily practice to turn these techniques from theories into automatic reflexes. But you don't need to wait for a bootcamp to begin your transformation. You can start right now, today, in your own room. Let me give you a highly actionable, incredible, simple daily routine you can execute starting with your next study session. So, open your book. Before reading a single word, ask yourself, why does this topic matter? Find the why. Find the connection to the real world. Then, look at the syllabus. Do not try to eat the whole elephant. Slice off a 20-minute chunk. Study that chunk. Try to genuinely understand the mechanism behind it. Visualize it as a movie in your mind. Close the book. Stand up. Walk around your room and teach the concept out loud to an imaginary 10-year-old. Extract the keywords. Write down 3 to 5 keywords that represent the whole concept. Test yourself. Tomorrow morning, before looking at your notes, try to recall those keywords, trigger words, and explain the concept again. See, consistency is the ultimate key to genius. Do not try to overhaul your entire life in one day. That leads to burnout. Start ridiculously small. Apply this 6-step code to just one subject for just 30 minutes a day. Practice it diligently. Defend the time. Slowly, over a few weeks, the friction will disappear. It will become your new normal. Once it becomes your habit, you will realize something astonishing. Studying actually, yeah, Studying actually becomes easier. It takes less time. It stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like an exploration. So, friends, that specific day in the principal's office, way back in 1995, taught me a profound lesson that I have carried throughout my entire adult life. Success in academics and success in life is absolutely not about how many agonizing hours you sit chained to a desk staring at textbooks. It is about the quality and the strategy of how you use that time. When you study with deep meaning, clear visualization, and structured techniques, your brain becomes your greatest ally, your greatest friend. It supports you. When you try to cram without meaning, your brain becomes your greatest enemy. It actively resists you. So I want you to truly hear this. You possess an incredible, almost limitless ability to learn absolutely anything. Your brain is a biological marvel, a supercomputer far more advanced than anything we can build. But you must read the user manual, you know. You must use it correctly. The user manual. Stop forcing dead information into your beautiful mind. Start treating your brain like a dusty. Stop treating your brain like a dusty storage locker. Yeah, please get me right. Yeah, or let me repeat it. Stop forcing dead information into your beautiful mind. Stop treating your brain like a dusty storage locker. Start treating it like a processor. Start understanding the world. That is the real ultimate secret to academic and personal freedom. Now, now, friends, the ball is in your court. It is your turn. Don't just consume this information. Choose just one step from the code today. Maybe the Feynman technique, maybe finding the trigger words, the keywords, and apply it to whatever you are studying right now. Do not wait for the perfect Monday. Do not wait for the beginning of a new month. There is no such thing as the perfect time. There is only right now. Even a tiny microscopic change in your methodology today will compound into a massive life-altering difference a year from now. Well, friends, before I sign off, let me quickly rapidly summarize the blueprint so it is fresh in your mind. Yeah, take a mental screenshot of it. Let me tell you. So, first one is understand the why, anchor the information to reality, then break it down, defeat defeat overwhelm with small chunks. Step 3, teach to learn. Expose your weak spots to explaining by explaining it simply. Yeah, in simple words, I mean. Then trigger words, the keywords. Use anchors instead of memorizing paragraphs. And then the final step, which is very important. In fact, there is one more step after this. Active recall and spaced repetition. Force your brain to remember and review at intervals. And the final step, that is practice writing. Build the physical muscle memory for exam day and wrap all of it in the vivid cinematic techniques of visualization. So, visualization is very important, friends. And when you fundamentally change your method, you inevitably change your results. When your results change, your self belief and self confidence grow exponentially. And when your confidence grows, your entire journey from the classroom to your career becomes not just easier, but it becomes a joy. So remember, true learning is never about memorizing words to pass a test. It is about understanding ideas to navigate the world. Once you truly understand, memory isn't a chore, it becomes completely natural. Okay, friends, that's it for today. This is Raghurama Bhat, your memory coach on wheels, reminding you to learn smart, stay relentlessly consistent, and unlock the true breathtaking power of your mind. I will catch you up in the next episode. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a good day.